Imagine this, a typical Saturday morning in Wellington, Florida, on May 26, 1990. The kind of morning where the sun was just starting to peek through the trees, casting long shadows across the quiet neighborhood. Birds chirped lazily from the trees, and the soft hum of everyday life began to stir in the air. For Marlene Warren, it was a day like any other. A peaceful, unassuming morning at home. She was in her kitchen, preparing breakfast, when the doorbell rang. At first, it was just a surprise delivery. A clown stood at the doorstep, holding flowers and balloons. The colorful balloons, swaying in the breeze, seemed almost innocent, like something you'd see at a children's party or a festival. The clown's outfit was everything you'd expect, fluffy, exaggerated, and adorned with bright colors. Marlene, confused but amused, stepped forward to greet this unexpected guest. She smiled, thinking it was some kind of joke or a harmless gesture, maybe a neighbor's idea of a prank. As she reached for the balloons, something inside the clown's costume shifted. In an instant, the clown pulled out a gun, aiming it directly at Marlene. Her smile faded into disbelief, too late to react. Without a word, the clown fired. The shot rang out, echoing through the quiet neighborhood, and Marlene collapsed, the force of the bullet shattering her face. The balloons, once cheerful, floated aimlessly in the air above her still form. The clown didn't hesitate. Calmly, almost mechanically, they turned and walked away from the scene, as if nothing had happened. No panic, no rush, just the sound of soft footsteps fading into the distance. Marlene's family, hearing the noise from inside the house, rushed to find her, but it was too late. Her life had been stolen in an instant, leaving nothing but a pool of blood and an eerie trail of unanswered questions. No one saw the clown's face. No one could explain why Marlene was targeted. And just like that, a chilling mystery had begun. A puzzle with pieces that wouldn't fit together for nearly 30 years. This is the story of the killer clown. A chilling case that seemed like a bad dream but turned into a real-life horror show. The door slammed shut behind the clown, their task complete. Marlene, stunned, crumples to the floor as the life drains from her. The air is filled with a sickening silence before the neighbors burst into the home, hearing the commotion. They find Marlene lying there, bloody and barely conscious. Panic sets in as someone dials 911, and within minutes an ambulance arrives. Paramedics fight to save her, trying to stabilize her, but the damage is catastrophic. Marlene's last moments are a blur, a struggle for breath, but her fate is sealed. The bright Florida morning suddenly seems hollow, as though the very air around her has become tainted. Marlene is rushed to the hospital, but despite all efforts, she succumbs to her injuries. The scene at the crime site is just as bizarre as the attack itself. Balloons still hovering in the air read a chilling message. "You're the greatest." A twisted joke, a seemingly innocent gesture, now forever linked to this brutal murder. The very balloons that should have been part of a celebration become symbols of an unthinkable tragedy. As investigators flood the house, the clown's footprints fade into nothingness. No sign of forced entry, no fingerprints, nothing that would tie this killer to the scene. The costume, a disguised weapon, was left behind with no clues to trace it. In a town that had never seen anything like this, the police were left grappling with an unsettling question. Who could have committed such a grotesque act and left no trace behind? The killer had vanished, and with that, the nightmare was just beginning. In the days following Marlene Warren's tragic death, investigators began to look closer at her life, searching for clues that could point to the identity of the clown or anyone who might have had a motive to kill her. The focus quickly shifts to Michael Warren, Marlene's husband. On the surface, Michael seemed like any ordinary man, a businessman running a successful car rental company. But beneath the facade, cracks began to show. Michael's relationship with Sheila Keene, one of his employees, caught the attention of the investigators. Rumors had long circulated that Sheila wasn't just his employee. Many whispered that she was also his mistress. Their closeness, the private lunches, the frequent private meetings, they didn't add up. But there was one problem. There was no concrete evidence to suggest an affair, let alone involvement in Marlene's murder. Despite the growing suspicions, the case hit a standstill. Forensic experts found no DNA at the scene. No fingerprints were left on the clown's costume. The weapon had disappeared, and the killer's identity remained a complete mystery. It seemed like the clown had simply vanished into thin air. Michael Warren and Sheila Keene both remained in the spotlight, but as time passed, their alibis checked out, and they had no clear motive for murder. They continued their lives as though nothing had happened. Sheila even married Michael years later, making the connection between them seem almost too perfect, too convenient. But what if this perfect picture was just another part of the plan? What if the truth had been sitting in front of investigators this whole time, waiting for the right moment to come to light? For 27 years, the case of the killer clown remained a mystery. Every lead, every theory led nowhere. The clown's face had been hidden behind a mask, and the costume had vanished into thin air. Marlene's death seemed to be just another unsolvable crime in the police files. But in the background, the whispers never stopped. Some believed Sheila Keene, the woman involved with Marlene's husband Michael Warren, knew more than she was letting on. Others speculated Michael's involvement in his wife's murder, but there was no proof, just suspicions that kept the case alive in the minds of investigators and the public. In 2014, nearly 3 decades later, the cold case was brought back to life. The Florida Cold Case Unit, armed with new technology and a renewed sense of purpose, decided to give the case another look. They knew that time and advancements in DNA forensics could be the key to solving it. One of the key pieces of evidence was a strange find: hair strands that had been found in the clown's wig. At the time of the murder, it hadn't seemed important, but with the power of modern DNA testing, the hairs that were once dismissed as irrelevant began to tell a story. The DNA didn't just match anyone. It led directly to Sheila Keene. For the first time in years, the investigators had a solid lead, something they could work with. And it pointed to someone who had been right under their noses all along. 2017. More than 27 years had passed since Marlene Warren was murdered in her own doorway, and yet the haunting image of that clown lingered like a shadow over the case. The investigation had gone cold. But then, out of nowhere, a break in the case came from an unexpected source: DNA. For years, Sheila Keene had remained a mysterious figure, close to Marlene's husband, Michael Warren, and yet no one had ever been able to tie her to the murder. That was until 2014, when investigators, using cutting-edge forensic technology, revisited the case. The DNA recovered from hair strands found in the clown costume finally led them to Sheila Keene Warren. In 2017, Sheila's life came crashing down. Virginia, where she had lived for years, suddenly became the center of attention. Authorities arrested her not as Sheila Keene, the woman she once was, but as Sheila Keene Warren, now the wife of Michael Warren, a man she had once worked with, but whom she had never publicly married. The ties between the two were far more complicated than anyone had realized. As the news spread, prosecutors revealed the shocking details of the case. Sheila wasn't just a bystander. She was the one who purchased the clown costume. She had been the one with access to the murder weapon. And the most chilling part? She had planned it all. 2023, more than 2 decades after her arrest, Sheila Keene Warren finally stood in court. The weight of her past and the truth was undeniable. With her guilty plea to second-degree murder, the haunting question remained: why? By pleading guilty, she avoided a life sentence. But the deeper truth of her motives remained elusive. Was it revenge, obsession, or something darker? The case had reached its resolution, but the mystery of why a woman would dress as a clown to take a life still hung heavy in the air. Years had passed, and justice seemed to be slipping further out of reach. After all the years of investigation, the hair-raising theories, and the sense of betrayal that had hung over the case like a dark cloud, Sheila Keene Warren stood in the courtroom, a guilty plea on her lips. It was 2023, and the long-awaited moment had arrived. Sheila was ready to accept responsibility for the murder of Marlene Warren, second-degree murder. The charge sent a ripple of disbelief through those who had followed the case. Was this truly the justice Marlene's family had been waiting for? After 27 years, Sheila would serve a 12-year sentence for the brutal crime that had haunted so many for decades. A 12-year sentence for a life taken in cold blood. The outrage was palpable. For those who believed Sheila's role in the murder was more than just the clown at the door, the idea of a plea deal felt like a slap in the face. Was justice truly served? Sheila's sentence was a far cry from the life in prison many had hoped for. But perhaps the most unsettling detail was the absence of Michael Warren in all of this. Despite the overwhelming evidence pointing to Sheila's involvement, no charges had been brought against Marlene's husband, Michael. Many still wonder, did Michael orchestrate the entire thing? Was Sheila merely a pawn in a much larger, darker plot? Or had Michael simply played the part of a grieving husband, hiding behind the public spectacle while he remained untouchable? His behavior throughout the investigation had always raised eyebrows, but no evidence had ever surfaced to hold him accountable. Was the smiling clown with a gun simply a disguise for something even darker at play? The haunting image of that clown, the balloons, and the gun continues to linger in the minds of those who followed the case. It's a terrifying reminder that sometimes the face we see at our door is far from the one we expect. And for some, the most unsettling question remains: will we ever know the whole truth? The killer clown case isn't just about a murder. It's a haunting reminder of how the past can come rushing back when the right tools are applied. In a world where old cases gather dust, the power of forensic science has breathed new life into investigations that once seemed beyond hope. Thanks to advancements in DNA technology, a cold case that had stumped detectives for 27 years was finally cracked. The clues were always there, hidden beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to surface and reveal the truth. And when they did, they led to Sheila Warren, someone who had been right under everyone's noses the whole time. But what truly makes this case unforgettable isn't just the science or the mystery, it's the haunting image of a clown, a symbol of innocence and joy, twisted into something unrecognizable. A face meant to bring smiles instead brought death. A mask so familiar yet so terrifying. And now when the doorbell rings, what do we really know about who's on the other side? The question lingers. What if the person at your door isn't who they seem? What if the person offering you flowers, a smile, or even a handshake is hiding something darker beneath their disguise? In the end, the killer clown case isn't just a story about one woman's tragic death. It's a reminder that nothing is ever truly what it appears to be. And if you enjoy true crime stories that uncover the dark truths behind history's most mysterious cases, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel.